I think 18-year-old me was quite meek and quite mild and lacked confidence. And I think that's something that comes to us women with age anyway. You
Yeah.
become more accepting of yourself. And it was only really when I got the business that I had before, I realised actually I can do this and I should be confident in myself and I shouldn't question everything that I want to do and whether I'm good enough, especially to stand up to male peers, which is what I always. Whereas now at 42, this is me, and there's no point me apologising for who I am and being, too loud and perhaps a little bit too cocky at times.
Welcome to A Beginner's Guide to Being a Grown-Up, the podcast. Today we have the fantastic Sara Whatley with us. She is the co-founder of Ailsa's Aim, which is an amazing charity in Northamptonshire. And I know she's going to talk to us lots about what you do, what drives you, and how you came to be a founder of a charity. So Sara, welcome and thank you for being interviewed today.
No, thank you so much for having me.
So I'm going to kick straight into learning a little bit more about you as a younger self and your journey into adulthood. So tell me a little bit about that journey as you kind of became an adult.
Okay, so childhood was fairly normal, to be honest. All very happy. I've got one brother. Never really excelled at school. Was kind of always one of those kids that did all right at everything. So whether I revised for my exams, whether I didn't revise for my exams, I was always going to get the same outcome. And basically, I had no idea what I wanted to do when I left school. So yeah, kind of fell into my job, my previous job that I had at about 19, and started working in optics. So I trained as an optician by trade, and worked in optics until I was 36.
So what changed?
A cancer diagnosis. So my husband and I couldn't conceive, and we decided to go down the route of IVF. And I was lucky enough to fall pregnant with the IVF. Obviously, the world changed that instant. And after a fairly complicated pregnancy, I was diagnosed with ovarian cancer at about 32 weeks.
Wow.
So we kind of thought that we were through the bad part with the IVF and we were through the needles. And yeah, at that moment, they performed an emergency C-section. Ailsa, my daughter, who the charity is named after, was taken to high dependency, to special baby unit. And I was taken down to Charing Cross Hospital in London to undergo really intense chemotherapy. And it's kind of a knock-on effect, really. So that's where the charity came from. And also that's why I left my career. I couldn't do the career anymore. And I didn't love it. It didn't allow for me to be as good a mum as I wanted to be and be there for Ailsa, because it's retail and it's 9 to 5 and it includes weekends. So yeah, we founded the charity on a whim, as it were, very, very small. And it's grown so much in the last 5 years to almost unrecognisable, which is incredible.
So tell me a little bit more about the charity. What's the kind of purpose behind the charity?
So what we do is we supply and deliver essential care products. So anything from sort of toiletries, entertainment, phone chargers, that sort of thing, to anyone in the UK that's got either a cancer diagnosis or has got a baby in neonatal care. The reason behind it is we realised when we were in hospital, Niven had to choose between either being in London with me, being in Kettering with Ailsa, or going to the shop and sort of purchasing all of those really mundane items that we needed that we didn't realise that we needed. And the NHS just don't have the funding to be able to do it. So it's kind of down to us now as a charity to fill in that middle ground. So we supply everything to the hospitals. Those bags are given out free of charge to anyone that may need it. And we sort of work that way.
And so so you say all over the UK, so kind of how did you grow that from, I've got this little idea that I've had an experience.
Absolutely.
To what you do now?
Yeah, we started off from Kettering General only. And as time's gone on, more hospitals have joined in. We now do sort of as far up as Derby and Nottingham, as far down as kind of Kent, Southend. There's still a few hospitals that we're missing. And it's just, once people hear about you, especially via other charities like Macmillan and things like that, the call for it now is just phenomenal. What with cancer being 1 in 2 and babies in special care being 1 in 10, people are just increasingly finding themselves in a situation where they're in hospital and they don't have the basic essentials to, be able to go and brush their teeth and just to feel a little bit more human.
And I think it must be, as you go through that process of, I mean, I can't, my mum had cancer, so we spent a lot of time in hospitals when I was younger. And I can't imagine having to do that whilst also having a newborn that you can't see. That must have
Absolutely.
been incredible. And then, as you say, the real practical stuff of, I feel horrible
Yeah,
because
no,
I
yeah,
haven't got the basics.
absolutely. And it was just, the basics were just something else just to A, keep me occupied, B, keep me feeling a little bit more normal. Thrown into the mix, I did have really bad postnatal depression as well. So for a little while, I didn't particularly want to see Ailsa. And that was just another thing that my husband had to deal with. So it's just, it is only a little thing, but it's something that actually means the world to people because it's almost like a security blanket, really, isn't it?
Yeah, I think sometimes those little things at those points of trauma,
Absolutely.
those because it must have completely thrown you. You were getting ready to be a mum.
Yeah. Which was everything that we wanted,
Yeah.
everything that we were working towards. And I did have a conversation with Niven from the hospital, and I said, "Are you okay? Because cancer's a big word." And he was just like, "I know what you mean." And I was like, "It's always something that happens to other people. It's never anything that's going to happen to me." And as a healthy 36-year-old, I never expected to have what's deemed as, an older woman's disease. And if it hadn't have been for the IVF, it would never have been diagnosed. So
Wow.
it was going to happen anyway, and it just so happened because with the IVF you're constantly scanned, they could see that something was forming. They didn't know what it was. They thought it was a cyst at first, but obviously turned out to be grade 3C. So I've obviously had a lot removed, but it was life-saving. So the
Wow.
least I can do is set up a charity in her name.
I'm
That's it.
not sure that's the reaction most people have, Sarah. So I think we might come and dig into that a little
You
bit
know
more as
what?
well.
Something good had to come of it. I think if
Yeah.
something bad would have come of it, cancer would have won.
Yeah.
And I'm stubborn as a mule, and it was never going to. And something good had to come of this, even if the charity remained small and we just stayed in Kettering General Hospital. If I can make one person aware of ovarian cancer, I'm happy because it is out there and it's not as well spoken about as like breast cancer and bowel cancer and things like that. So
Yeah. Am I right in saying it's quite hard to diagnose as well? So as you say, you were really lucky that actually you were being looked at intensely because of
absolutely,
the baby.
absolutely. So March is actually Ovarian Cancer Awareness Month. And as a charity, we've set ourselves a goal to have 10,000 conversations because the symptoms for ovarian cancer are so generic. They're so much like an IBS, and that's why it's often misdiagnosed. So it is known as the silent killer. But looking back, I did have the symptoms. I was bloated, my appetite wasn't there, there were changes in toilet habit, but that's kind of all I had. And I never really pictured that to be a cancer diagnosis. I thought in my head that was just pregnancy. It was, the IVF meds.
Yeah.
It was just being pregnant. And yeah, people just aren't as aware of ovarian cancer symptoms.
So I get the impression you're quite tenacious. Is that fair?
Yeah, I would say so.
So if you went back to talk to your 18-year-old self and she could see what you're doing today and what your life's like, what would she recognise in you? I'm guessing tenacity might be one of them.
No, probably not. I think she
Okay.
would probably recognise the fact that I'm still a home bird.
Okay.
I think 18-year-old me was quite meek and quite mild and lacked confidence. And I think that's something that comes to us women with age anyway. You
Yeah.
become more accepting of yourself. Whereas 18-year-old me probably would have maybe thought things a little bit too much and perhaps not pushed her boundaries enough. And it was only really when I got the business that I had before, I realised actually I can do this and I should be confident in myself and I shouldn't question everything that I want to do and whether I'm good enough, especially to stand up to male peers, which is what I always had. And then obviously that's come with time. And especially with the charity, we realised, we are doing a good job. We're servicing 7,000 families last year.
Wow.
Which is an incredible achievement. Yeah.
So if she wouldn't have recognised that, but she recognised that kind of home bird piece, what would she be absolutely blown away by?
Oh, I think in all honesty, all of it. I think how collectively as a family we've dealt with the cancer diagnosis. I can't say that we've fully taken it all in because I think some of it you do mentally just block out. But resilience, I think, is probably the main thing. Resilience and confidence. I think looking back, as I say, I didn't have enough confidence in myself, and that's grown. I mean, for me to leave the house when I was 18 without a full face of makeup, looking absolutely perfect, as most 18-year-olds are,
Yeah.
I would never have done that. Whereas now at 42, this is me, and there's no point me apologising for who I am and being, too loud and perhaps a little bit too cocky at times.
I think you probably need a bit of that though if you're having to
I do,
hustle for
yeah, you do to
fundraising
survive,
and
absolutely.
absolutely. And I think you're right. I think women we definitely come into our power as we get older. We realise that actually we can do whatever we want.
Yeah,
Once we've dealt with, having to work in an industry maybe that's more male dominated than female, having to deal with things like going through IVF, not being able to conceive. That's a roller coaster of a journey
absolutely.
even before the cancer diagnosis and the starting of the charity, right?
Yeah, it's something that I think we take for granted. You expect to be able to fall pregnant really easily. You're always warned of it, aren't you? And it was one of those things that we were like, oh, that's fine. And then, months turned into years and we were like, actually, we think that we might need some help.
Yeah. So she would recognise the home bird. She'd be amazed by that tenacity and what you've been through and
Absolutely.
running a charity. So as part of that journey that you've had into adulthood, have you had any experience of and I'm guessing if you run a charity and you're having to ask for fundraising, the answer to this is probably going to be yes, of kind of rejection or kind of failure, and kind of how have you handled that?
Not failure as such. I kind of always felt like in parts of my old career, old me, I was never good enough because all of the people that, owned businesses or, were seen as sort of senior management, kind of always looked down on you a little bit because you are female, I was of childbearing age. They were always like, you're just going to go and have a kid and you'll never come back. And I was just like, no, I will. Yes, I think there's still that kind of inequality, but I don't think it was a failure as such. I think if anything, that's driven me to push myself even further.
Yeah.
And my husband is fantastic at spurring on women. He's all about equality. That's what his PhD was in. Women should never
Wow.
be marginalised. So not failures as such, but obviously there are always things that we have to overcome on a day-to-day basis, and I think that sadly applies to most women.
Yeah. And I guess as a founder of a charity as well, kind of going after things like fundraising, you must get rejection
Constant.
and have to just kind of pick yourself up and go, right, I'll try again.
Yeah, some of it is gutting, and you do take it personally, but it is a business decision at the end of the day. And we have to constantly apply for funding. It's something. There's two of us paid staff now, because the charity is able to obviously hold that, and we need the hours put in. But yeah, you do have to remember not to take it personally. To put your big girl pants back on, crack on, and go for the next one.
Yeah. I think that's probably a good advice for life in general, right?
Absolutely. I think that's, these things, we're always going to have stuff that we don't want to happen.
Yeah,
And I think it's how you get over that shows who
yeah,
you are as a person.
yeah, absolutely. And I think you never know what life's going to throw at you, right? And I think
Absolutely.
you're absolute testament to that in quite
Yeah,
an extreme way. I
absolutely.
feel.
I
Yeah,
mean, yeah, there was no way as I said, I didn't know the symptoms of ovarian cancer. I was aware of cancer, but I just kind of thought, well, it doesn't happen to pregnant women, and it's not going to happen to me because it's me, and also I'm a healthy 36-year-old. But here we are. But
yeah,
luckily, touch wood, it's all good. The chemo's worked. There's still a few after effects from it, which they're never going to go. And Ailsa as well. Ailsa's a bubbly, very sassy 6-year-old. So
yeah.
things have turned out well generally.
Brilliant. So you must have had to make a lot of decisions, not just over that time of the diagnosis and the starting of the charity, but we all make big and small decisions every day, right?
Yes.
What is the best decision you've ever made?
To date, we moved our charity premises about 3 weeks ago.
Okay.
So we've got a really, really beautiful building. It's something that I had toyed at for such a long time, but it's such an expense. And being charity money, you don't want to waste it. But we do need somewhere to pack. We need somewhere to work. And we'd grown to the point where I think that we could be self-sufficient. However, we're comfortable where we were, and it was cheap. And today, I think this is the best decision because now we've got people coming in constantly, talking to us. We're able to raise so much awareness, A, for our brand, B, as a cancer awareness campaign, especially this month. And it's just a beautiful place to be. And it was a case of, do we play safe? But if nothing changes, nothing is ever going to change. Or do we take a really huge gamble and go for a new building? And that's what we decided to do, with quite a lot of shoving from my side. But so far it's working out really well.
Brilliant. Excellent. And as you say, hopefully that gives you even better access to people to do the
Absolutely.
awareness.
Absolutely. And it makes us more equal as well, because it means that we've now got disabled access, which we didn't have before. And there's no reason why we shouldn't be opening our doors to everyone that wants to come in. So
Brilliant. I want to delve a little into the being a founder of a charity because I think I'm fascinated by it, but I also think the listeners will be really interested in that journey of kind of deciding to found it and then kind of how you make it grow. Like, what are the big challenges that you've faced?
the biggest challenge, well, I mean, there's many along the way. So we didn't start off wanting a charity. We did some fundraising for Imperial Health Charity for Charing Cross, where I had my chemo, and we raised £11,000. And we thought, oh, actually, that's, we've done really well there. That's fabulous. Let's set up a charity. And for anyone that may know or doesn't know, until you've reached £5,000 fundraising, you don't need to set up a charity. And it wasn't long, in all honesty, before we were there. And we registered as a charity March 2020,
Wow.
which, as you'll remember, was a terrible year.
Yeah.
So I think lockdown happened on the 27th. We registered as a charity on the 20th. So we had that, we were only a week old. But through that, we were able to supply essential care products to the hospital staff as well, who
Oh,
couldn't get
wow.
hold of, if you set your mind back, we couldn't get hold of toilet rolls
No.
or face masks or hand sanitizer because it was all in my house. We were able to buy it in as a registered charity and take it all down to Kettering General Hospital.
Oh, amazing.
And we were like, actually, we are making a difference. And then as time's gone on, there's just been so much more call for it. And I wasn't working at the time because I'd quit my previous job in optics. And I was like, actually, I'll throw a few hours in. It will keep me mentally going. Yeah, and it's just grown. And then maybe 2 years ago, we took on our first member of staff, which is my sister-in-law, Beth. And then last year I said, actually, I need to pay myself a wage because I've never done that before. So yeah, I mean, now there's two of us working full time on it, and yeah, 7,000 bags going out. So it's grown. We've now changed what we supply. So we now supply not just bags, it's men's, women's, and non-binary, because we found out that the men were kind of a forgotten demographic, and non-binary people just weren't catered for. There was just nothing for them. We also supply makeup bags because you lose your identity whilst you're having cancer treatment, because you almost feel like there's nothing about you. And we supply free of charge radar keys as well. So we have quite a lot of.
What's a radar key?
So radar keys are. Do you know when you see a disabled access toilet
Yes.
and they need the key to get into it?
Ah,
It's
okay.
that. So it opens up 10,000 toilets.
Wow.
So me being one of them, having cancer treatment, I need to know where the next toilet is. And this just gives people a little bit of normality after treatment, so that they can access those toilets, and they don't have to be concerned about spending the day with their family somewhere. It's such a small item, but it genuinely makes the world of difference to people.
Yeah, and I guess having had that lived experience, I'm guessing talking to a lot of the people who these bags go to, you've kind of learned over the years what are the things, the kind of unexpected things that impact
Absolutely.
you, either if you're going through cancer treatment, or you said you supply neonates as well, kind of
Yeah,
if you've got a little one in a neonates. As you know, my sister works in
yeah,
neonates, and it must be the thing that, I mean, for your husband, because he would have been the one up in Kettering,
absolutely.
it just completely throws your world, because it's the last thing you expect
Of
to
course.
happen, right?
And especially with a first child as well, you're not aware of what you're going to need, and we didn't know that baby was coming. Um, but yeah, from the neonatal side, we do sort of the bags for the babies to sort of help with the bonding. We do mum's bags. We've got sibling bags in case there's
Oh,
older brothers and sisters, and it's boring being in a hospital, isn't it? Especially when you're really small. So
yeah,
we do stuff to keep them entertained.
amazing. Oh well, I think your charity is amazing, and I think what you
Mm,
do, the difference, as you said, things like a radar key, it's a really small thing, but
absolutely.
sometimes at the worst times in life, those really small things are the things that really make a difference.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's exactly what we've found. And people
Yeah,
are so grateful for it as well. And it's, a lot of these people have got unexpected hospital visits. And you go empty-handed, don't you? You don't have your phone charger, you don't have deodorant, and let's face it, hospitals are fairly warm at the best of times. It's just anything just to make
yeah,
you feel a little bit better about yourself. Even if you then decide to pass those items on because they don't suit you, it's always nice getting a present. And I think that what most people take from it is the fact that they're not alone. They're not going through everything on their own. There are other people out there that have got a similar story, and I think that's maybe the biggest thing that I want to go into the care packs.
yeah. I think realizing you have a community and a tribe, like someone's got your back a
Yeah,
little bit
absolutely.
when you're kind of at your lowest, I think must be really, really quite powerful.
Absolutely, absolutely, because it is such an isolating experience, and my sort of journey of the cancer journey was completely different to my husband's journey of my cancer journey. It is so isolating, and it's just that one small thing that could essentially mean the world to someone.
Yeah, yeah. So in this journey that you've had, both, going, becoming an adult, becoming an optician, and then, the IVF journey, the cancer, and the charity, I am sure you've been given lots of advice. We know everybody loves giving advice. We love giving advice, good and bad. Um, and so what I'm wondering is, what is the best piece of advice that you've been given, but that you completely ignored?
All that I've completely ignored. To be honest, I do tend to take things on, not perhaps to how they meant it, but I do take things on board. One of a prime example that I've taken on is in my old optical life. I was told if you don't love something, if you can't love it 100%, don't do it. And that was a huge factor of me leaving my old job, because I was like, actually, do you know, I don't love it, but it's, you know, I don't think it was a bad call, really. I love what I do now. And I think it's given me, the cancer diagnosis especially, has given me a completely different outlook on life.
I bet.
Work doesn't matter. It's my daughter. She's 6 years old. I'm not going to get all the time in the world with her. Soon she'll be 16. She won't want to spend all the time snuggled on the couch with me. So yeah, at the moment, I'm enjoying that.
I think that's really powerful, actually, which is, you know, it takes something big in our life sometimes, doesn't it? To make
Absolutely.
us step back and go, do I really want to be doing this? Do I love it? I think that's a really important kind of thing, which is, do you feel it in here? Because if you don't, it's taking you away from your
And,
friends and your family.
and it, you know, it's one of those things. There's no point going to work and being miserable, is there?
No.
You know, if you love it, then that's great. But also the other side of it is, I was 36 when I realised that work didn't matter and I was working too much. And actually, this has given me a whole completely different outlook. And now I only work school hours and I only work term time because I can. And the rest of it, you know, I spend with Ailsa, and then I can log back on and carry on work when she's in bed. But I do get to spend those really precious moments with her, which, as I just said, you know, we're never going to get back.
No.
And I wonder how many people regret that later on in life when they realise, you know,
Yeah.
work never really mattered.
Yeah. And many people, thankfully, don't have to have the epiphany because they haven't been through what you've been through. But the epiphany is useful, but
Absolutely.
ideally
And
without the
what a
cancer
silver lining.
diagnosis.
What a silver lining, to be fair. And
Yeah.
at such a young age for me to still be able
Yeah.
to, you know, get through the chemo and get through the cancer diagnosis and then be able to enjoy everything afterwards.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm hugely grateful to all of the medical staff because they did such a phenomenal job. From the IVF clinic through to my consultant down in Charing Cross, they've all been exceptional. And the chemotherapy nurses especially were absolutely on it.
Yeah. I mean, it's quite a journey you've been through.
It is, it is. And they do see so many people at the lowest, yet they've still got the compassion to be able
Yeah.
to treat each person as an individual.
Yeah.
And I mean, it takes a special kind of person to do that job. Same with the neonatal. You
Yeah.
know, that's a completely different type
Yeah.
of person, isn't it?
Yeah. I think I always say saving tiny humans must be an amazing job to do, but it must be one of the hardest.
Absolutely. It must be physically draining, I will
Yeah.
imagine.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't believe we've come to my final question. It's
Oh,
been
really?
so interesting, Sarah, and your story is so interesting, and your charity is amazing. And you know, I know the difference it must make to anyone who gets one of your bags is huge because it is those small things that make a big difference. So, as the podcast is called A Beginner's Guide to Being a Grown Up, one of the questions I ask everybody who comes on the podcast is, if you could, if the book existed, if there was an actual guide, what is the one thing that you would put in the guide so that your younger self would learn it earlier than you have?
I would say stand up for yourself. Because no one's ever going to speak up for you. And I'm constantly trying to teach my daughter this, that I mean, there's ways and means of doing it, but always put your voice across. Say what you're feeling, you know, how you want things to be. And I think, you know, without that, we wouldn't have got the charity going. Because if I hadn't have spoken up to my husband and said, you know, I think we can do this, I think that we can set a charity up, let's name it after Ailsa, I maybe my self-doubt would have just left that as an idea in my head and it wouldn't have come to fruition. So I would say believe in yourself. I think that anything's worth a gamble. If you want to do it enough, go for it. What's the worst that could happen? Perhaps you lose some money. It's not the end of the world, is it?
But you might change the world for somebody.
Exactly. Even if it's just one person. That's a huge legacy, isn't it? I think life is so
And I think,
short.
yeah,
We need to,
yeah,
to grasp it with both hands.
yeah. And I think that word legacy probably epitomises what you do as a charity. And I'm sure Ailsa will look at it when she's older and just be absolutely wowed by what her mum and her dad did.
Well, I don't know. She'll probably go, I hate green. I don't know why my name's and everything. But at the minute, she loves it. At the minute, it's a big talking point. It's her premises, it's her charity, it's her shop, as far as she's concerned.
I love it. I love it. So I love the takeaway as well from all the things we've talked about. That kind of believe in yourself, kind of back yourself and speak up.
Absolutely.
It's so important. It's so important. So I thank you so much for your time today. It's been really interesting talking to you. For all of our listeners, we will share the link in the show notes to the charity. I'm sure now you've heard of them that you will see them about if you unfortunately happen to be in a hospital. So,
You'll
Sara,
probably
thank
see our
you.
vans on the road anyway. We've got a few vehicles going around.
Oh, brilliant. Excellent. It's one of those things, isn't it? Is now we've talked, I'm definitely going to see one.
Absolutely. You can guarantee it.
Brilliant. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of A Beginner's Guide to Being a Grown-Up. If you enjoyed it, please like, follow and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. If there's someone who inspires you that you'd like me to interview, you can find me on LinkedIn, Instagram and TikTok. In the meantime, enjoy being a grown-up.